Blender for Noobs.
Hello and welcome back to the Secrets of Blender modeling the Berkey spacecraft. In this part 13, we're going to be looking at setting up the lighting on our spacecraft. So we look here, I've already taken this section here and just duplicated it and moved it over to here. I did take the go into edit mode and just grab all these vertices around this edge and just extrude them, so I do have a backing on the back part of this area right here. The other thing that we need to look at as far as the modeling is these running lights that we created, which is right here. I actually want to get those on a separate layer because when we go to do our compositing, those need to be on a separate layer. So we need to make sure we have all of them selected. And I just want to move these over to the third layer. So those are on the third layer. The other thing that I want to do is these platforms that we have here are a little bit thin. So I want to give those some thickness. So I'm just going to go into tab and edit mode here and go one front view. And probably the easiest way to select these is just select one of the vertices and choose L. Make sure we get one of them that's on the platform itself, and choose L. That'll choose the entire platform, and then I'm just going to choose B and use my middle mouse button to select the top vertices only. And the middle mouse will end up deselecting those. So then I'm just left with the bottom ones, and I'm just going to bring that down a little bit there, so just to give that some thickness. And we want to do the same thing on the other little platform here. Just deselect those and just bring this down and give it some thickness. And that way when it renders, you'll see a little bit more thickness there than just, a single plain looking piece. Okay, so that pretty much does it for the modeling. I mean, you're free to add or change whatever you want to on the modeling. But when we look at our faces, we're at just over 66,000, which is not bad at all. I mean, for this kind of detail on a spacecraft, really not too bad. It's by no means a low poly model. It's fairly high, but to get this much detail on something like this, it's a pretty good number, I think. Okay, so let's go forward with our lighting. Since we're dealing with something in space, we have a little bit of a problem, because if you deal with something that is on Earth and it has a surface below it and everything, then you have the ability to reflect light upward and different things like that. And in this case, if we turn on our lighting, I'm just going to shift select lighting, our lighting phase here. I had this backdrop surface just for the purposes of doing test renders. But really, of course, in space, you're not going to have any surface there. So I'm going to go ahead and X delete that. We don't need that anymore. And this panel, I'm going to use it, but I'm going to put it in a different place. Again, in space, realistically, if you see something in space and say the sun is out here pointing down at it, you're really not going to see any of the other side of the spacecraft at all. So we have to kind of fake it a little bit, because you do want to show off your model. I mean, you do want to get a good render, but you want to show off your model as well. So there will be light there, but just realistically there wouldn't be. Okay, so I'm going to choose one front view, and I'm just going to rotate this panel straight like that, or fairly straight, and move it over that way. Go into 3 side view, and I'm just going to tilt it like this, and just going to bring it probably about right there. Come over to our settings. Let's look at the color. I'm going to change this a little bit. Make it a BEDAE7. Just give it a little bit more bluish color. And I'm going to change the power, the strength of this to 5. So that's lamp 1. Let's go ahead and let's duplicate this lamp. Shift D, bring it over here, and I'm just going to rotate it pretty straight like that. Go into front view. Okay, it's pretty much a straight plane. So I'm going to do a SX on it, scale on the X. Just want to make it pretty thin there. SY, scale on the Y. And we want it to be about the length of our spacecraft. Maybe a little bit more. Go into 3 view. Let's see what we got. Let's make it a little bit longer, SY, scale it out a little bit, and go back into our front view, and let's Z so we can see what we're doing. And I'm just going to R, rotate this, and then I'm going to G, move it fairly close to the spacecraft. And I actually want to make this a different part. So I'm just going to choose the plus mark here and rename this lamp 2. And again, we're going to use the 5 and we're going to leave it the same color. And Z back into our solid view here. And the only thing I'm doing here really is I'm giving this kind of a sharp light across the surface here. What it's going to do is just make kind of like a different pattern right across these pieces. Really serves not a whole lot of purpose other than to just have a little bit of difference there as far as the pattern. So we'll see how that turns out. The other thing that we want to do is we have our lamps here, but I'm actually going to add a sun. I'm going to do a Shift A and go to lamp and choose sun. Go ahead and bring that up. And one front view, and I'm just going to R, rotate it at a slight angle, something like that, and come over to our settings, and I'm going to change this from 0.1 to 0.01. And what that does, the lower you go on this value here, is the sharper the light is going to hit the object. So if you make this a larger, say if you make the size like a 3 or something, is pretty much going to cover your whole object, kind of like a soft light type thing. But being this size, it's going to create more of a sharp edge light. And for the strength, I'm going to change that to 10. And color, let's go into the hex and change that to AFD9FF. And this is just a kind of a little bit more bluish color. Okay, and that is our basic light setup for now. We'll see how this turns out, and then of course, you know, as far as light goes, it's a lot of tweaking where you want to play around with your lighting settings and make sure that they look okay. The other thing, of course, like we did before, we want to choose our lamps, go into the object data here, and just make sure the camera's turned off, so if it's in the way, then the camera won't see the panel at all. Same thing for this one, we have the camera turned off, and that should be good. And also I had saved this as version 13, of course, for the lighting. So I'm just going to do a quick save. That is it for the lighting. The next and final section is probably the most fun section out of it, I guess, is the compositing, where we're going to go ahead and start bringing in our background and putting together our different layers and kind of tweaking with the settings so we get the right look that we want. So I'll see you in section 14.